Welcome everyone to Archetypes in the News for May 14th, 2018. And we're going to take a look at a couple of good news stories for a change this week. And we're going to start with the Plimpton 322 Babylonian cuneiform tablet. It was actually discovered information was released in 2016, but I was just made aware of it recently. And I want to speculate on a couple of things that I've been thinking about with it and see what you guys have to say about it. And we'll also take a look at the United States withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal and the Palestinian protest in Israel, and Kim Jong-un's chart and transits, and what kind of an anomaly it is for what's taking place in this, what looks to be a really hopeful situation, in that there may be denuclearization potentially on the Korean Peninsula. But let's begin with what is interesting with Jupiter's cycle is every year it makes a grand trine, a trine when it makes its stationary position. So when it stations retrograde or stations direct, it is in a 120-degree angle to the sun and to the Earth. And it does this every year. So the most beneficial planet, the planet that is generally related to support and generosity and good upliftment, is in the most harmonious relationship, the trine, with the sun and the Earth at its most potent positions, the station, every year. And this is a really fascinating phenomenon that it seems like a blessing of the cosmos itself, like a sacred geometrical situation that is blessing the Earth with this harmony with the great benefic. It's interesting, even we can apply this even to astronomy. They think that Jupiter actually has guarded the Earth in a lot of ways and absorbed a lot of asteroid impacts that otherwise may have hit Earth. So again, this cross-cultural and cross-disciplinary adoration for the planet Jupiter, and it's just an amazing thing that's taking place. And so when we take a look at the Plimpton 322 tablet, what's really interesting about it is that it is from 350 to 50 BC, and it actually describes the motion of Jupiter. And they say in the article that the computations recorded on the tablets covered a period of 60 days beginning on the day when the giant planet first appeared in the night sky just before dawn. Now, this doesn't quite make sense. I kind of think they're wrong about it. I think what they're meant to say is that when Jupiter appears just after sunset, because you can't see it in the daytime, but also the astronomy isn't correct when it is rising with the sun. When it's opposite the sun, the 60 days after that, it actually does what the article says, in that it moves into its slowing position and moves into a stationary retro or direct at 60 days, roughly. And we'll take a look at that here. So what I'm going to do is move it in by days, and this will be 60 days worth. So after sunset every day, it moves a little bit higher in the sky, all the way till you get to the 10th or so of July, 9th or 10th of July, and it's stationed. So Jupiter stations here and then begins to move forward again in relative position in our sky. But what's fascinating about this is the Babylonians seem to have potentially derived a form of calculus or a form of trigonometry that is advanced by 1,000 or 1,400 years prior to it being discovered in medieval Europe or Christian Europe. So this is a really interesting case where there is an unearthing of an intelligence, an understanding, a mathematical understanding of nature that predates our understanding a good 1,400 years, and actually is more accurate. Supposedly the form of trigonometry in the cuneiform is, because it's based on the 60 base hexamal system rather than a 10 base metric system, then it has a capacity to be more precise. So it's actually a more accurate form of trigonometry than we have in the West. So deeply, deeply fascinating. And I'm curious to know how much did their observation of the planet Jupiter figure into this, because in the write-up it describes how it's the calculation of the motions that create a trapezoid figure underneath. And so I don't quite understand what they're saying, but they figured it out by recognizing that there was a trapezoid description in multiple pieces. Then they realized that it was actually the planet Jupiter that they were following that made the trapezoid image. So I am deeply fascinated by it, and I'm curious to know if any of you guys have information on it as well, and curious to hear what you say about it. So Then we'll go ahead and move on to some of the difficult stuff that's happening in the world, which is the United States, or Donald Trump's decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. And he basically had no reason for doing this that he can really say, other than he hates Obama and Obama did it. So what's really fascinating about it is it may actually be setting up where I've talked about before in an early episode about the Saturn-Pluto cycle that we're in now, and the history of war and conflict, and Israel is also born with it, and the history of Israeli conflict corresponds to the Saturn-Pluto cycle in major ways. And so having the Saturn-Pluto happening now, the potential for divisions and othering is more prominent. And what is unfortunately seems to be happening is that you have kind of the Saudis and the Israelis actually coming together with the United States, all kind of ganging up on the Iranians. And I don't know, of course, what's going to happen, but what's ominous is that this alignment is in the sky right now. Mars, Saturn, and Pluto. Sorry, the image is right there, but it's a Saturn-Pluto conjunction with Mars, and you see that often when in beginnings of wars and stuff. Mars is assertive, warlike god, and Pluto intensifies it, and Saturn is judgment and boundaries and constriction. So it feels as though one is caught in a constrictive situation where one feels like one has to potentially attack to protect oneself. All of these energies are constellated during these time periods. And what's deeply fascinating, if we just also extend this to the Palestinian protests, today is actually the 70th anniversary for the Declaration of Independence for the State of Israel, its birthday. And it was also born with the Saturn-Pluto-Mars triple conjunction, interestingly, and it began the first Arab-Israeli war on this day. And then if you track the rest of the wars, actually I wrote an article for the Archive Journal, and I'll try and post a link for it in the write-up here. If not, write me and I'll send it to you. But it goes through the history of Israel's conflicts with the Arab world, and it was written in 2008, so it doesn't cover the 2009 Gaza war, which also had a Saturn-Pluto square with Mars, I believe, when the war began, and incredibly devastating event there. So there's more that's happened since I wrote it. But anyway, the Saturn-Pluto alignments and the Mars-Pluto alignments are all written up there. So anyway, this is potentially an ominous situation, and it fits the archetypal alignments that are going on. So we should also talk about the situation in Gaza. So as I said, it's the 70th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence for the State of Israel, and it's also coinciding with the movement of the United States Embassy to Jerusalem, which is a very provocative act in the eyes of the Palestinians. And what's taking place there, as far as I can gather, is the Palestinians are protesting the fact that they live in basically what is an open-air prison, and Israel controls the borders, and for intake and outtake of the populace or any of the goods. So they don't have control over their own well-being, and they are protesting that situation with rocks and burning tires and burning kites. And the Israelis are bombing them with air assault today from an airplane. They also are using drones with tear gas canisters, and they're using live fire. And today they killed 49 Palestinians, supposedly wounded over 2,000 people, and no one on the Israeli side of the border is getting injured. So they're basically sitting on the other side of the border they control and killing people who are protesting the situation that they're in. So yeah, I've kind of laid out my position on that situation, and of course would like to hear what anyone has to say. And to all my Jewish friends, this is not an attack on the Jewish people or the Jewish faith. I just have a problem with the way that the State of Israel conducts its politics. So that's where I stand on that. And what's really fascinating, again, is that Israel born with the Mars, Saturn, Pluto triple conjunction, and the fact that it's in the sky again today, and we get a resurgence of the boiling over of these energies and more of the othering. And I saw a little bit of what Jared Kushner said today, and it's just shameful. So that's the way I feel about that. But let's move on to better subjects. So now let's take a look at anomaly. This is really fascinating. This is Kim Jong-un's chart on the inside. We don't actually know the year he was born. He's most likely born in 84, according to his aunt, but he's born on January 8th, either in 1982, 83, or 84, supposedly, hopefully. And it seems as though if this chart is correct, in any of the 3 years, 82, 83, 84, he's born with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. If he happened to be born in 84, he's born with the Mars-Saturn-Pluto conjunction as well. And interestingly, the Mars-Saturn-Pluto in the sky is on his sun. So he's had Pluto conjunct the sun for a while. Saturn's going to move on to it and over the next 2 years. So that will be interesting to see what happens. But what I found intriguing about this chart is that he's born with the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction with Mercury, and but the Jupiter-Neptune combination tends towards optimism and kind of utopic vision, like high, lofty ideals, kind of rose-colored glasses of optimism and living in paradise. That's its kind of energy, and it can lend itself towards a really compassionate, loving, supportive energy. That's Neptune's very compassionate and Jupiter very supportive. So this tends towards blessings and stuff. And what's interesting is they're in a trine in the sky, Jupiter at 17 Scorpio to Neptune at 16 Pisces, and that is bisectiling his sun. So his sun is at the midpoint position of Neptune and Jupiter in the trine in the sky. So this could be part of what we're seeing, this kind of surprisingly moving towards peace, seemingly rather rapidly. There could be lots of reasons for this. It may not happen. From what I understand, where he's been doing the nuclear tests, the mountain is crumbling, so he may not be able to do the nuclear tests anymore anyway. So there's all sorts of possibilities for why this is happening. But anyway, I felt like it was interesting to look at the alignments and see what archetypal combinations are at play, and definitely some intriguing stuff going on there. So I kind of rushed through this. I got a lot of stuff going on, but I felt like I wanted to reach out before I go to UAC in a week. So hope everyone's doing well, and I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to any questions or comments you may have. So everyone take care.